Hi there, my name's Alex and I run the Autism Acceptance page on Facebook. If you're seeing this on Facebook, you will know that. If you're seeing it on YouTube, I will drop a link in the comments section to my Facebook page where you can go along and check it out. I cover a wide range of topics from a neurodiversity standpoint, but a non-woke one, and a compassionate one all the same. So if that's something you would be interested in, then yeah, check out my page. Today I would like to talk about my experience as a PDA with occupational therapy and physiotherapy. Now, PDA stands for, the official term is pathological demand avoidance, but a lot of us reject that label and don't think it's very fair. A lot of people use the term pervasive drive for autonomy, and people use other acronyms, but whatever it is, it's basically nervous system geared, anxiety driven, compulsion, if you like. I say compulsion, sometimes it's a protective mechanism. I'd rather say protective mechanism, although there can be some compulsions attached to it. It's a protective mechanism that helps people with the condition to basically take care of their nervous system and stay out of distress and those big biochemical storms that come to get us sometimes. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit how things affected me. PDA, I was a very anxious person. I can still be very anxious. I have phobias, phobia. I have issues with balance and coordination. I've had short-term memory issues, but my long-term memory can be really good, depending on what I want to remember, the substance, or sometimes it's random, but it depends on how it gets to my brain. So when I was a child, I kind of struggled with self-confidence. I was a bit clunky with social. I didn't really understand the social rules that weren't meant to be the meaningless social rules, the social rules that didn't have any substance, if you like. So why would you be interested in something for the sake of being interested in it, like something that's come into fashion, and then just completely lose interest in it? I mean, that can happen. Your sensory and perceptual things can change, but it's not about sensory. Fashion isn't about the latest in thing isn't about sensory experiences. It's about being sold to. It's about groupthink, basically. And I don't do groupthink. I'm an individual. If you happen to individually think the same as me or similar to me, then great. We'll have a conversation. We're on the same we may be on the same wavelength. But if we're just following fashion or following something because the marketers have told us that this is what we need to follow, that this is what we need to buy, I'm not always buying what you're selling. And my parents were marketers, so I guess that kind of helps as well. They were always teaching me how the other side of marketing, how not to get manipulated. A lot of marketing is about manipulating people. So when you understand how you're manipulated or how you manipulate others, you then go on to understand how not to be manipulated yourself. So yeah, in that sense I had that, and as I was very psychologically savvy, and I wanted to know why people did things, and if something didn't feel right, it's like, why? This doesn't feel right, so why would someone want to do it? Why would someone want to do something that's uncomfortable? Why would someone want to do something that feels that doesn't feel right? And I guess for me, I can relate to the double empathy thing, because I kind of struggled to think, if it doesn't feel right to me, how can it feel right to another person? If I have this sensitivity, how come no one else has this sensitivity? Or the people around me have this sensitivity? How can they handle something and I can't? Or how can I handle something and they can't? Growing up, that was always kind of like, that always made me curious. But what I want to talk about is the therapies that I had. I never had ABA, luckily, because my parents, mainly my mum, was in charge of, my upbringing when I was, growing up. My dad worked away a lot. But I know my dad had a massive influence on me. We were very close. I'm very like my dad. But yeah. I couldn't see how, why we should do. I needed to know why we should do stuff. I couldn't take things on, this is how it is. Why do I need to do this? The answer being, because I told you so. That wasn't good enough for me. I did, in some authority figures I feared. I did have a respect, I say fear, for my mum. I trusted her, but she was very much the boss. But yeah, I had balance and coordination issues, and I had issues with short-term memory, and so, some sensory issues. As I've said before, I have a love relationship with affection and touch. So I did, in the 1980s, I went through physiotherapy and occupational therapy. Now, my physiotherapist was a bit of, like you'd imagine a strict headmistress to be back in the day. Kind of no nonsense thing, and she used to try and have me walking on balance beams and stuff. And I don't know how much my mum wouldn't let people scare me. So I don't know how much my mum would had input on that. But yeah, she would hold my hand, and then she got where she would stop me from block, put her arm around me, but not touching me, so around my space, so that if I fell into her arms and stuff when I was walking. But it made me nervous that she used to make me walk on these balance beams and do all this stuff. At one point, I remember her walking on this balance beam, and she said, "I'm not going to hold you, but I'll put my arms around your body, so that if you fall, you'll fall into my arms rather than fall. But you're not going to fall, because you're going to be looking at your feet and doing what you know." And I think she was a little bit too strict. And one thing I found is that it was hard to concentrate because I was nervous, because I was scared. That is a physical sensation. Emotions have biochemical feedback. Biochemical feedback has biochemical talkback. The physical sensation of your emotional state can be like a drug, have like a drug-like effect. You can get drunk off your fear. You can get drunk off your anger. You can get drunk of your happiness, your joy. You can get drunk of any intense sensation that you have. And that's what's happened to me with my fear when I was trying to walk on the balance beams, which was then affecting my concentration. I don't think I could articulate that at the time as a young child, and people just didn't seem to understand that. They tried to get me to ride a bike, and that was unsuccessful as a kid. Again, it's fear and balance and coordination. They had me lying on the floor, like pedaling my legs like I was riding a bike. I could do that. Sometimes it was a bit uncoordinated, but that held no fear for me. So I wasn't distracted by a sensation when I was doing that. So I think physio was a lot less successful because of that, because she was a bit of a stickler and didn't understand the fact that get me to do things I was scared of was actually making it harder for me to concentrate on the cognition of doing them, because I was fighting through the sensation of my fear, through the biochemical sensation of my fear. So the occupational therapy was more successful, I think. I have always had issues with short-term memory. What they used to do was I was never any good at games like Snap and stuff, card games and stuff, because I'd never remember what the last card was. So they used to do these games where they'd show me items, and then they'd cover them over, and I'd have to name the items, and they'd get the items out that were under the cover. And they did various experiments with that. They just showed me the items for certain length of time. They did it for shorter times, and they also let me touch the items, and they gave me clues as well when not to tell me exactly what it was, but to kind of trigger me so that it could, the clues they were giving me, it could have been a couple of things, but if I remembered, their clue would lead me to the right thing. So in that sense, they did exactly the right thing. Things like I had trouble with coordination, so things like scissors control. I actually liked cutting out. I don't know what it was. I just liked the sensation of cutting into the paper. It kind of gave me like a little tingly feeling. But I could never cut straight. I was left-handed and all scissors were right-handed, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But yeah, they gave me these kind of scissors, blunt enough to not cut myself, but sharp enough to be able to cut the paper, and I did that. I also had trouble when I was a kid until I was quite old. I used to do my letters backwards, so I'd do my B's as D's and vice versa and stuff like that. So they did sand tray stuff with me. So I'd trace it in the sand and then I'd write it. So what they were doing there, they were looking at, instead of sight, looking at and seeing something and then copying it, which I always seem to have trouble doing in school. I really struggled to copy off the board, but if my teacher would have to write on the paper that I wrote on above, I could write the right thing below, directly below her writing. But if she'd written on another piece of paper or on the chalkboard, I'd be confused. So is that. So, we practiced that sort of thing. I practiced tracing because I was my sensory memory, my touch memory. So if I could do the D in the sand, then I'd have a sensory memory of how that felt. So when I wrote down the letter D, then I think about how it felt in the sand, and I'd be able to do it the right way around. So instead of doing it as a B, I'd do it as a D, and that sort of thing seemed to help. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember a great deal, but those kind of guessing games and kind of giving me clues and stuff like that, and what do you need to be triggered. Once I got something, I got it. But I've always needed to. I always never learnt my times tables because I always need to link something to something in order to be able to remember it. It always had to have some kind of substance. I couldn't just randomly wrote. I had to relate it to something so that I could remember it, be it a situation or a smell, a touch, a taste, or something. I remember going to Tenerife with my dad once, and he got this phrase book from English words into Spanish, and I learnt a lot of Spanish words, a lot of Spanish phrases. Me and my dad learnt together, so that we could communicate when we were in Tenerife. It turned out a lot of people spoke English, but he wanted me to be able to obviously, ask in their native language when we went over there, and say certain words. And this phrase book was quite good because it gave the words, Spanish words tend to be as they, spelt as they're sounded. A lot of English words are silent words, whatever. English apparently is one of the hardest languages to learn when you look at it written down, because there's a lot of things that aren't spelt how they sound. Of silent letters, like if you look, say, night, IMNIGHT, and then the night as in the night, the person has been knighted, KNIGHT, and it's not as it sounds. But Spanish words are as they sound, pretty much. And this book gave links to it that you could hold substance to. So gatto was cat. So the book would say, imagine a cat jumping on the worktop and eating your chocolate gatto off the kitchen worktop. So gatto, so I get that mental picture in my head of the cat eating the chocolate gatto off the worktop. Donde is where. So I didn't know a Don at the time, but these days, right now I might think of Donald Trump. So where's Donald Trump? Donde. And or maybe where's Donald Trump today? And think it's daytime, and I'm looking for Donald Trump. Donde. So you kind of link it like that. Donald Trump's an asshole, by the way. But yeah, just using that as an example. So you find ways to remember things, and OT is good because it looks at the things that you need help with, the things that you're struggling with, and it helps you to build those muscles and find ways around them, find get-arounds and ways to combat the things that you find hard, but to do it in a way that works for you. So yeah, I think that's pretty great. Stephanie Bethany, wonderful content creator. I post a lot of her work on my page. She is trained occupational therapy assistant, and she talks about occupational therapy quite a lot. I recommend her page, great page. So yeah, that's my story, and yeah, I definitely think for me, occupational therapy had a more positive effect on me, definitely, than physiotherapy. Although, physiotherapy done right and done with the person's sensory and phobia stuff in mind can be very helpful. And finding get-arounds is important. You don't necessarily have to bulldoze through the thing and do it as everybody else does it. Finding a way to do something, even if it's taking a different path from the conventional one, from the one most people are using, doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you get there and are able to do something and do the task, get the job done. So yeah, I hope this helps. Love and peace to you all. If you haven't already and you're seeing this on YouTube, give my autism acceptance page a little link, click in the comments, and a little cheeky little follow. And yeah, love and peace to you all, and remember, you're stronger than your struggles. Bye for now.